have integrated. To help us discuss these issues, we will be hosting in the studio right now Mr. Robert Sordam. He's a musician of mixed origin, but raised in the Netherlands. He is a vocalist and a composer. Robert, also called Robby, started out at the age of 5 with accordion lessons, and at the age of 12 he switched to the trumpet, and at 18 to the guitar, and 22 to the piano. So he's an all-round musician. That's awesome. As a vocalist, he performed with a variety of jazz formations, such as Juan Pablo, Naja, and also as a vocalist, guitar in Gilly Costa's Robert Duck Band. As a vocalist, keyboardist in the Consultants of Swing, and as guest vocalist with Vincent, that's Frafra Sound, Hena's Project, and Kaseko Revisited. Well, and then participated with this project in the theater tour and various radio and TV recordings in the Netherlands and in Suriname. Well, there are many more things he did that we cannot mention now. Robert is also an organizational psychologist, specialized in organizational development with focus on diversity. He is a consultant in the field of culture change and supervises the development of new organizations. Robert is also the managing director of IKO Foundation. On this note, I would like to say, baby, welcome. Robert, what do you prefer, Robert or Robby?
My friends call me Robby.
Robby, okay. We'll do Robby. Yeah, it was nice to have met you recently, and I think the connection just struck like that. Now, discussing race issues always tends to evoke sentiments and mixed emotions. But can you tell our listeners the very first time you had cause to feel different because of your skin color?
Yes. Well, to feel different?
The very first, the very first time you had cause to feel different.
Yes.
Because you look different.
Because of my looks. Okay. Because I felt different from a very young age. I felt different. But then I did not interpret it to my color. Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is also something that you can feel different, but you don't know yet what the difference is about.
Yeah.
But of course, this is also to do with growing up and finding your identity and your place in society and stuff like that.
Yes.
But the very first time that it had to do with my color, I must admit that while I was born in Amsterdam, from a Dutch mother and a Surinamese father, of course, when I grew up, I compared myself with all my peers.
Yeah.
And for a long period, of course, I did not see any color.
Yeah.
Or I have to say, I did not realize the impact of the color.
Yeah.
So all my friends were white
Guys.
white guys. And, you know, I did not make any difference between that.
Precisely.
You had good friends. You had assholes. You had jerks. You know, you had sweet. You know, all different kinds of youngsters. And I didn't make too much of a difference. But this very first moment I can remember was that my father called me to him. Because what had happened, we were, as usual, with a number of friends going outside our neighborhood and doing some, you know, nasty stuff what young guys are doing of the age of maybe 6, 7, 8. You know, taking away apples from the grocery and doing naughty things.
Yeah.
And then what happened that one of us had a baseball and the ball went into a glass of a shop and the glass broke. But it was not our neighborhood. It was a complete other neighborhood. So then we took off, we ran away from that neighborhood. And we were about maybe 8, 9, 10 of us.
Now, were you, what's the makeup of the kids? Were you colored kids or a mixture of white and black?
My friends?
Yeah.
No, they were all white.
White.
Because me and my father was the only black guy. There was another black guy, but he was the only one in our neighborhood. But what happened when we ran away from the other neighborhood?
Yeah.
Then a couple of hours later, they come to ring at my parents' door. Say, your son, we have seen your son in the other neighborhood. He broke a glass.
Oh.
So this is the moment where my father called me. He said, listen, you were with how many guys there?
Yeah.
He said, well, 9 or 10.
Yes.
He says, do you know why they come to our door? He said, because you're the only black, because you're the only black dude. Of course they recognize you.
Yeah.
You know? Of course. They don't know the other guys. They know you know.
Your colors are studied now.
That was, I can recall the very first moment that my father took me apart and talked about common issues.
Ooh.
Wow.
That's really remarkable. That's really remarkable. Now, that is one side of it. Now, how did you think of this event afterwards? I mean, how did you feel about it? Did you feel any kind of racial bias because of that event? Or it was just that, on a neutral level, you just stood out because you had a different color?
Yes.
Can you explain that to us?
Well, the effect of that was that I experienced, I would call it an extra responsibility. An extra responsibility, which was even strengthened by the vision of my father, because you should realize that my father was what we called the more colonial kind of people.
Yeah.
They were brought up with this image of white culture being farther and better than black culture. This is how, in the colonial period, most of Sordam people were brought up.
Yeah.
Their culture was inferior to the white culture. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
So he was always trying to do his best here in the Hollands, because he experienced that he always said it was their country and we are guests. So he was like overcompensating to do his best.
Yeah.
And of course, when I grew up, I started to reject to that. Because while he said, this is their country, this is already I objected to that, because I said, it's my country too, I was born in it, I shouldn't be their country. So here is an interesting thing is happening between me and my father, which ended, of course, in a huge generation conflict.
Wow.
Of course. Because all the time I was growing up and I was interested in my father's land, which I have never been till there so far. And there was the period that Surinamese people would send money, clothes and stuff like that to Suriname, and they would receive packages back with amazing fruit and food products, and every time they opened up that box, this smell of Suriname came out of those boxes, which was amazing. Remember, I knew my grandparents only from pictures.
Really?
So I started to get more interested in Suriname, more interested is where my roots of my father, lied, and what is the meaning of that country. So this is how I grew up, started to get interested, even more interesting in the black culture than my father was.
Wow.
Because my father said, you should be interested in the black culture, you should be interested in this white culture, because here you live, and here is where your future is, and stuff like that. So actually I had the fortune to experience both of the cultures. As well the culture of my mother's side and the culture of my father's side. So from a very young age, I experienced, also by people who come to our house, whether it would be white aunts or white uncles or black friends of my father's or black uncles. From a very young age I experienced that people do not differ in being assholes or not. You know, because I had some white uncles who were definitely crazy. But I also had some black uncles who were definitely crazy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I had some white uncles who were very sweet and very bright and very intelligent. And I had some black uncles who were extremely spiritual and wise and stuff like that. So this is how I grew up, with seeing that there are differences, but these differences are what I called gradual and not fundamental. On a fundamental level, there is no difference whatsoever between one man and the other. This is how I grew up.
Powerful. That's a very powerful philosophical statement. Now, let me just ask you the next question. Okay, you said you were born here, right? You were born here, you were raised up here. So can you give us a sense of how integrated society was back then when you were growing up, and what is it like now?
Yes.
So, yes, this is a very good question. I already said that when I grew up, my father was one of the few black people in the old neighborhood. And this was the time that black people from Sordam, when I was walking around with my father, and he saw another black man, they would stop and talk to each other and say, "Where are you from? When did you come? Who's your father? Who's your mother?" This is something which Raymond on television is also, you know, doing when he has a guest in the show. The first thing he asks, "Who's your father? Who's your mother?" Because this was very typical for that period. You know what I'm saying? And my friend and valuable colleague, Gilly Koster, he came to Holland when he was about 7. And he came to my school, as a matter of fact, in the same class.
I noticed that you guys have been together for a long, long time.
From 7 years. And then they told Gilly, the kids in the school, they told Gilly, "Hey, we have one exactly like you." And so they were talking about me, you know.
But he was dark. He's dark.
Yeah, he's dark, and he's from Suriname, and we were the only 2 black guys, kids in the whole school. This was in the Indische Buurt. Now, if you go to that same school in the Indische Buurt, there are only 2 white guys on the whole school. The rest is like black, Moroccan, Turkish, wherever from, you know. So within 30 years, this is completely changed.
Amazing.
Completely changed around. But I was I thought it was very interesting that Gilly came from Suriname, because now he started to tell me one-on-one about
life in Suriname.
Life in Suriname. I could relate very much to that.
Yeah.
And then in the Indische Buurt, it was what we call a labor area. You know, there was a lot of labor people. You know, my father also was working for the shipping company. He used to go on the big boats and go away, and that time people would stay for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months before they could get back. So when my mother was pregnant from my sister, who is 2 years older than I am, he went away on the ship, and when he came back, my sister was already born, 1.5 months. So then he said, "No, I cannot do this anymore." You know, so he stopped with that job, but he still worked for the same company, but he stayed here because he said, "No, this is too much. This is too much," you know. And the whole neighborhood was actually predominantly white, but it was very much of a social control. Everybody was looking after each other. It was very social, but very harsh. You know, people could be very harsh. Also calling you names, wishing you the most terrible diseases when they are, you know, upset. But I already experienced from a very young age that they didn't really mean that. It was a way of expressing their anger and even their fear, you know, because they could call you names and give you this evil eye.
No,
but an hour later, they would give you a drink, and you know, they would say.
So what was the reason why people were so kind of tense emotionally? That
they stood up and fought with the police and stuff like that. The pre-hippies, the provos were the pre-hippies. After that,
we are delighted to be, you know, informing, educating, and empowering you through this program. We are dealing with the topic being black and born and raised in Amsterdam. Mr. Robby Sordam is dealing with this issue right now. We want to return to the discussion to finish up because the time is really against us. We have so much to talk about, and hopefully we will have him back to discuss some more of these issues. Welcome back. Yeah. Okay. Now, can you recollect from where you last you stopped before the break?
Yes, the statement was that we have been silent for so long about this Zwarte Piet issue. That was one of the statements, which I reacted on by saying that it's not completely the case, because already for over 30 years there are people who are making this statement about the questionable portrayal of this situation of Sinterklaas and Zwarte Piet. Me myself, I produced a satire, a sketch of where a black actor and a white actor played the role, and then a black actor proposes to change roles this year. So he would play the Sinterklaas and then ask the white guy to play the Witte Piet.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is in 1983 or 1984. You know, I made it for the local television, television. So there is a long period. If people are making statements about this, you know, and giving signals and stuff like that. Only now it kind of exploded. You know. Because there's also white people who telling me, yeah, why is everybody right now, it's like everybody is like, I said, this is already over 30 years we are discussing it. It's like you don't treat yourself you treat your body not good if you have an ulcer, you know, if you don't treat it good, you know, it's a certain moment it's gonna be an infection and it's gonna explode. This is logical, you know. So now you have a number of people who didn't know that this situation can be perceived as hurtful or in it, you know. So there is a divergence of people who would say, "Wow, I don't give a damn. It's like that. They better adjust to our culture or our values." And you have another group who says, "Oh, this is interesting. Let's see where it takes us." So I think it's a good time now. There's a time and a place for everything, you know. It's a good time now for starting this discussion, and this discussion will not be over in a couple of weeks, not this year, maybe next year, maybe it takes, I mean, these things, to change these things, either you buy a Uzi or some dynamite, either you take the non-violent way, and then it might take some years to change these deep-rooted cultural values. And as a matter of fact, it also has to do with education. It also has to do with learning. And people must be prepared to learn. And if they are not prepared to learn, they have to go stand at the back of the line and give the people the chance to learn. And together we have to define these educational parts of this aspect. Because if I didn't know, I was ignorant, then I need some information to step out of this ignorance.
Yes,
and the result will be that I will be a better and richer person with more knowledge and a greater palette of making right decisions. We have to help each other with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robby. We enjoyed you, and we would love to have you back anytime soon.
Yes,
have a wonderful day, and God bless.
God bless.
God bless. How integrated was society then, and how is it now? I know you spoke about the mix, the ethnic mix. I mean, it's more mixed now than it was back then. But can you go a bit further in telling us about
of course,
how well or less integrated
Well, of course, you know, when there is not too much black people in white society, these black people are in the spotlight and they are exotic and they are, you know, interesting. Yeah, special, you know, everybody, you know, how is it with you? How are you guys doing this? You know, how is it in your country? This, there is a kind of, you know, interest in this. The problem is when the group starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and getting integrated.
Yeah.
This is where people think, you know. You know, it doesn't take long, or he's going to ask my daughter to go out with him, you know. This is where the problem starts.
Oh, that's where.
You know, but I can remember that I was very young of age. I must have been 7 or 8, and we went to this party of one of the uncles in the neighborhood. And of course, we came inside with my father, and of course, you know, everybody was white. And then we make a kind of a circle in the living room, and everybody shook hands, introduced themselves. And then we encountered this man, this white man sitting on the bench, and when my father stuck out his hand, this man turned away his head. Wow. And I did not really grasp what was going on because I was small and too young, but I felt this awkward tension there at that moment because my father didn't take no shit from nobody. So he wanted to tell this guy something. Yes. And then I heard my mother told my father, leave him. Don't let him be. Don't even, you know, try to ignore him. Yeah. And this was the first time I really felt this in my guts, in my toes. The effect of
racial attention.
Yes, of discrimination, of acting like you are nobody.
Now, at this point, I would like to know, is this something that's on an individual or personal level, or you think something that is basically on a societal level? Because this thing comes up every now and then, and from your perspective, I would like to know, for you to establish whether what was happening then, what that man did to your dad, do you think it was a personal thing? Or it was something he was just reflecting what was already playing out on societal level in terms of discrimination?
So I guess this example I just gave you now was an example of a direct discrimination. People who just do not want to interfere or communicate with people of another culture or people of another culture. I must say that for me there was a rather exceptional, but to encounter it, to experience. But there must have been more people like this guy, of course, you know. But the majority was you know, accepting and kind of friendly. But you must realize that, as I already said, when there is a conflict or there is tension in that kind of culture, people would start throwing names and sticks and stones, which they would think would hurt you. So the first thing they would attack you with is your car.
Oh.
That's what they did with me too. I was growing up in this white neighborhood. The moment I had a conflict with somebody, someone would tell me, "Then you go back to your country."
Just like that. You said, "Where's your country?"
I had to go home and ask my mother, "What do you mean that? You know, where do I have to go?" You know? And she said, "Nah, these people are like, you know, forget it." Yeah. My mother is a very simple woman. She always made a distinction between good people and bad people. You know, whatever color they had, you know. So this is the way I grew up. Of course, when you grow up and the amount of people of other culture are increasing, then you see that also the reflection of this monoculturalistic tendency combined with ethnocentric or xenophobic kind of tendencies, they also manifested themselves in society in different structures and systems. So this is where it gets interesting, of course, you know, but because people, you see in the whole Zwarte Piet discussion right now that people are very offended because they don't perceive themselves as racists. Yeah. So this is a signal, you know, this is a very important signal that you don't perceive yourself as something or somebody which a large group around you do. This is an interesting, from a psychological point of view,
Yeah.
maybe also anthropological, an interesting discrepancy.
Yeah.
Because I can say, I am not arrogant, I'm not arrogant,
But people perceive
but
you.
if everybody thinks you're arrogant, we have a problem. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Well,
God.
if you're listening to this program and you want to interact with us, feel free to give us a call on 020-737-1619. Our guest this morning is Robby Sordam. Interesting man. Yeah. Well, indeed, there's a psychological dimension to. Now, I just wanted to. You mentioned the rugby thing. This whole thing about discrimination. Is it? I mean, is it something I want to understand? Is it something that's coming out of people's or inability to accept themselves and therefore to accept other people, or is it something that's been crafted by society to put a tag on people and say, well, black is bad and white is good, or white is bad and black is good? It can be the other way too. You see? So I'm trying to get a call here. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Uncle.
Hey, Uncle B. Fine, how are you too?
Fine, I received your message. The festival went to very right. Everything's awesome.
Wonderful.
Your guest said the relationship about the white guys and the Suriname guys.
Yeah.
What I want to know is if there is any also guy coming from Africa, I mean the African diaspora.
Yeah.
If they are there, what is the relationship with those guys from Africa also? I want to know.
What's the relationship with who?
Yeah, because you talk about the white guys and the Suriname guys.
Yeah.
How about the African guys?
Uh-huh.
How does it like?
Okay. Now, have you understood his question somewhat? Yeah. We spoke about, the native Dutch with, someone like you from Suriname origin. Yeah. But okay, now we bring in those originally from Africa, for example, into the equation. Now, it wants to know how is the relationship? How do they, if this can discriminate against you, who
Is a white, almost
was
white.
born here, have you're partly Dutch, have Dutch mother and Suriname father. Okay, what of somebody who's from Africa, who is also thrown into the equation? How is the perception? I mean, what can you tell us? Can you weigh in on that?
From white sector?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think there is.
Or even from people from Sordam origin towards the Africans, for example.
I don't think there is
Big difference.
not such a big difference in perception.
Yeah.
But there is, of course, a lack with people directly from Africa. There is a lack of emotional relationship, I guess, from the Dutch society, because there is also a very strong emotional relationship between Holland and the colonies, of course, and Suriname.
Yeah.
A very conflictuous relationship, between Holland and Suriname.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Suriname, it looks like Holland. The Dutch houses. The Dutch created Suriname. They speak the Dutch language and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you must admit that my father, the way he spoke and wrote Dutch, was 10 times better than the average Dutchman.
Yeah.
This was also creating a problem.
Really?
How come this guy? He thinks he speaks better Dutch than I do. Yes, he did.
He did.
Because he studied
He
it.
studied.
He
made it a point to be good at it.
For him, it's a challenge.
Yes.
But he also spoke good Papiamento and Portuguese and Spanish. So he was, he really loved the languages. So I guess with the people from Africa, there is a more diffuse relationship than with the people from Suriname, and until it's more concrete. We were the best in Suriname, white people would say. We taught them everything.
Yeah.
We've been there. We created everything.
Yeah.
They cannot say that with Africa.
Yeah.
They just cannot say that. It's a fort.
Yeah.
Where do I go inside?
Yeah.
They're probably still searching for the door.
Uh-huh.
And the keys. You got to tell them where the keys are. If it's in your back pocket. But in my journey when I grew up in this adolescent stage,
Mm-hmm.
of course, reflected also to these white youngsters, adolescent youngsters called the provos, but they were a little older than we were, you know.
It's a provos. How do you spell that? P-R-O?
P-R-O-V-O. It stems from provocation.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Oh,
they were,
okay.
like, provocating
Oh,
everything,
okay.
you know.
Oh, okay.
Power. But at the same moment, there was this development in the States who would fight the power. You know, starting with Black Power, of course. You know, people like Stokely Carmichael. You know, Black Panthers. You know, the Soledad Brothers. And in my upbringing, we could very much relate to that movement because we could not relate so much to the provos because it lacked our reference of culture. But the means and the power and the courage was interesting. But we could directly relate to people like Angela Davis, who stood up and said, okay, you know, and Rosa Parks, who went sitting in that bus while everybody said, this bus is only for white people. She says, screw you, I'm going to sit in this bus. So we could very much relate to the power and the courage of those people. So we felt it was needed to start something like that in Holland too, to make people aware of, you know, the way they exclude people from other culture.
You know, I have a sense that we're going to have to invite you back to, because there are deeper dimensions of this discussion I would love for us to have.
This has to do with your questions. You are putting very interesting questions.
So I think we'll have to have you back. But let me take this next question. Do you think there is still a superiority complex among native Dutch? And if so, do you think it is the reason for the mindset? Let me read my question. Okay. Do you think there's still a superiority complex among native Dutch? And if so, what do you think is the reason for that mindset in these modern times?
Yes.
When there are top, let's say, engineers, doctors, professors of African descent or of non-Dutch
descent.
Yes. Have you understood the question?
Yes.
Do you still think there's a superiority complex among native Dutch people? When today we're talking about you have top-notch lecturers, professors, doctors, engineers who are non-Dutch, who are maybe of African descent, of another race.
Yeah.
So, if there is a superiority complex, where is it coming from, and why?
Yes. So we have to be very careful about generalizing.
Yes.
That's why I started to state in the beginning of this discussion the way I grew up. I thought that there are good people
And bad people, yes.
and bad people. So we have
That's very important to keep in mind.
I think so, because we have very bright white people who would really fight for justice and equality and stuff like that. And on the other hand, I also met black people who are suffering the same superiority complex. You know, so we have to be careful with generalization. But to take the freedom of speaking in more broad terms, that there is of course a tendency for people in this predominant white society of taking the stand of that they have all the wisdom and they have all the power to open up the door for you or to close the door and let you stand outside.
Okay.
This is a tendency, and if you ask me where it comes from, of course it comes from the way this Western world played their historical part, you know, with imperialism and colonialism, and you know, stealing ground and locking people up, and you know, and I must admit, they did a very good job in that. But it's immoral.
Yeah.
That's too bad, you know. It's immoral. But if you actually, and it is interesting if you would, when you say you would invite me another time, because then we can maybe perhaps talk a little more broad about it. Of course, it all starts. This problem all starts with the tendency of people to think that they are better than the other one. That's one. People have a tendency of thinking that they are superior to someone else, you know. This is one. And the second one is that, and then you have to go ages back, because I think evolutionary, we did not progress so much when you see that certain behaviors are from the Stone Age, where you have these groups and the groups have their internal codes, and they know how they speak, they know how they communicate, they know how they look like, they know how they smell. As soon as there is some creature coming, trying to get into this group, who smells different, who looks different, who talks different, then there is an evolutionary signal who says, this is a threat. And you must realize how powerful this is in the human brain. And we don't realize that,
Yes.
but it works like that. Maybe another time we can talk about the consequences of that.
No, let's take this other question. I just want to take you back to, you mentioned about this rugby discussion, which has been on. Why are people,
Coming up.
why are people feeling sensitive about it? You think there's a racism problem here?
A racism problem in Holland?
Yeah, regarding the Zwarte Piet issue.
Regarding the Zwarte Piet issue?
Yes.
It's a racial issue, but we have to be very careful in our definition of saying this is racism or this is not racism.
Yeah, but your perspective, I want to see your perspective.
Well, I think I'm, for now, I'm more on the side of thinking that it stems from this very, you say that, ethnocentric point of view, because this is.
I call it, just hold on, let him finish his point. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, people would say, this is our culture, this is the way we are, this for us is valuable, and don't try to touch it, and don't try to demolish it, and just do not, you know. So we have to do then with organizational change and cultural change.
Hi, caller. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, this is Alaji Ibrahim speaking.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you too? Good to hear your voice.
Well, thank you. I want to ask my friend this issue, because if I can see the whole scenario, is we as a black people, we are the problems because we have kept quiet a long time ago.
Why not?
So now my question is it a special, how they call it, organization fighting this type of psychological problem? Or just individuals fighting for their own rights?
You mean from the side of the black people or from the west, someone?
Right.
From the black people who fighting about this Swahili Piet and so forth, because it's a logical problem. Because they will never understand it that it's issue against some race. So my question is it a form or platform of special organizations or high profile from the black side fighting these issues?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, he is wondering this whole discussion whether it's a platform of people who are, fighting the whole thing, trying to, make it an issue, or just an individuals who are just discontented about the whole issue and they think it's racist and something should be changed.
Right now, that you see that this whole Zwarte Piet and Sinterklaas phenomena, which is a traditional feast, is putting in a perspective where it's evident that it has racial connotations, which in a second level are connected to stuff things like slavery, unequal representations,
Yes.
black and white and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you see kind of a development there, which is connected to, on the one hand, an emancipatory development of black people.
Yes.
Because they got more conscious about stuff, about not only their past, about slavery, but also the consequences of that past in the present.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Then you have a group of white citizens, and this group is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, who say, shoot, we have never perceived it like that.
Yeah.
We have never perceived it like that. So from that group, there is a tendency to also combine this new perspective in their consciousness. And these are our allies in this battle. And you have, I think, a minority of those black people who says, of the white people who says, I never perceived it like that, but I don't give a damn. You know, but I don't give a damn. It's our, and they resist, and they are getting aggressive. And this, of course, has to do with resistance to change. And also with a little supremacy kind of feeling that who are they to tell me to change? Who are they to tell me to change? You know, so it's getting more complex than...
I just want to say something here.
Go ahead.
I think this issue of, first and foremost, permit me to ask this question. Why is it that they kept quiet for a long time and nobody said anything, and all of a sudden this movement against the Swatpit and the St. Nicholas just began? Why did they keep quiet for a very long time? That's number one question. And number two question is, to counteract the majority group, you said they are growing and they are saying they are not conscious of the whole the whole sin, the whole process of Nicholas and the Zwarte. But my question is, when they look at the component of the whole thing, you have one Saint Nicholas, and then you have several Zwarte. That already shows something about master and servants. That already shows, because I was asking my husband, why is it that Saint Nicholas didn't have just one? Why didn't he have just one Zwarte? He has so many Zwarte in the city. Secondly, why would it be that? Thirdly, why wouldn't there be white pit? I mean, why would they have that myth that there's what entered the chimney, and then because he went through the chimney and then his color changed?
Wow.
You know, this whole thing.
Also say he came from another planet.
Yeah, let's just take the let's take the caller's question.
So why are they reacting now? Why is it now? Why didn't they react for a long time?
Okay.
Okay. Let me add the caller's question, and he can answer all of them. Hello, caller. Good morning.
Hey, Uncle.
Yes, sir.
It's me again.
Go ahead.
There is one thing I noticed, and your guest, I think you also noticed that. What I noticed is that those that who fall in between the church and the Suriname background,
Yeah.
they are very intelligent, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
And what I want to know is, I know monkey and donkey, they are all kinky, but they never the same. In other words, it's for him two cultures.
Yeah.
He might like one culture more than the other. If there is something like that, why he like one culture to the other one? I want to know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, see how you can answer all both questions. See how you can put together an answer for.
The last question is, I would like a culture.
No, he says that he noticed that you are mixed. You have Dutch and African culture, Sudan culture. So you might want to prefer one against the other, or you might have a tendency to be on, prefer one.
Oh no.
But anyway, see how you can.
Not really. There have been some periods in my life that I was confused because black people would think that I would be too Dutch, and Dutch people would think that I would be too black. So I left that shit behind me. I left that stuff behind me. But the question of Sister Helen would say, why is it now that people start to talk about this issue? It's not really correct. Pardon me to set that straight, because me myself, I have been making a sketch for television, a local television, in 1984. With two famous actors. One is a black actor, Glenn Durford, and the other one is...
Do you mind if I interrupt you? Let's take the news and then we'll come back to finish, so hold your question.
Okay, I will say that then after that.